Earlier, several years ago actually, I made a video solution for Vestfyn, exam assignment here. And now I'm going to try to figure out if I could make a more comprehensive list of the steps in activity-based costing, the ones that are in a more or less typical exercise or typical exam question. And now I gave it a try. So I have here, so I'll show you something from from my steps and from the assignment text and also from the solution. So I'm not going to make the solution as I go along because you can actually see another video where I do that. So this is about Vestfyn's brewery, and we will go down to the English questions. It's down here. This is still Danish. Let's see what happens here now. I got to the wrong place. Now we're getting closer from one way or the other. Yeah, it's around here. Okay, so go over here to my list. I say, okay, first one, find out what is the cost objective in the exercise. And you can pause the video and read the text here. I'm not going to read it out to you, but you'll find out in this case it's actually about, this is a abbreviation for the brewery. They're making private label retail products, beer probably. And so in this case, Corn, Delight and Extreme are 3 customers, but at the same time it's also 3 products. So in this case it is product and customers at the same time. That is the cost object. So 3 cost objects here. So that's an important thing to have in mind. Next thing is that very often you have to compare an old system where they have where they do not have activity-based costing, and probably have to improve on the conclusions they made from there. That doesn't have to be always the case, but it very often is. So let's see what we have here. We have cost of goods sold. That's like the direct cost in this case. And then they say here marketing, selling, administration, distribution expenses are 10.8 million. So this is 40% of each customer's sales revenue that goes for this. Well, this is another word for the indirect cost. That's the one thing we have to have in mind here. This is indirect cost, all in one cost pool, and it's 10.8 million, and again 40% of the revenue. So if I take that PDF file away and I look here, and I can maybe do without the Danish text right now. It's okay. So, oh, I'm sorry, I'm up here. Yeah. So this is actually something that was, these 2 rows are repeated. Oh, no. These 2 rows are repeated from the assignment text. And actually, if we assume this is also variable cost, then we could say revenue minus the direct cost. If it's a variable cost at the same time, it will become contribution margin. So 10 minus 4.5 million becomes 7.5, etc. And we also have some totals out here. And then we have the indirect cost. How can I calculate this? Well, I just put the 40% right into the formula. So it's 40% of the revenue. And they end up with a profit. The 7.5 million minus 4.8 gives profit 2.7 million. And then we see down here, we can make some calculations. We have the contribution margin ratio. How big a percentage is contribution margin out of the total revenue? 7.5 million out of 12. That is 62.5%. And we actually see in this exercise it's different for each of the 3 cost objects. You have worked with other previous exam assignments where that is not the case. Several times actually we will get the same contribution margin ratio under the old system, but here that's not the case. We can also deduct the if we take 40% away in all cases, we get the return on sales or the profit divided by the revenue, or however we want to call it. So there's an old system and it gives us this data. So if I go back here, yes, you should identify there's an old system. and if it's relevant, then calculate profit under the old system. And yes, that was relevant here because it didn't finish the calculation for you. You've seen that in some other old exams. They actually finish the old calculation for you, but they don't do that here. It just says 40%, and then you should actually finalize it. That's what it says further down here. Apply the traditional. Oh, come on! I don't want that. It says apply the traditional cost system, one way or the other here. Okay. So that was number 3. When you do that, and you basically reach the conclusions I just told about here. Okay, next step, find out what are the direct costs and can be allocated without a problem. And actually in the supplementary text that I don't read out here, I say that in many cases that is already stated for you. In this case, the direct cost is the cost of goods sold, and that will not change in the activity-based costing. So you must identify that. And this question of number 5, identify the activities that causes the indirect cost, and let's choose to cause these MSDA cost in this case. So we go back and see what we can find. Yes. Alternative cost allocations should show the following data. They don't. It's part of the challenge for you to find out it's activity-based costing, so they don't put that word, at least not up here. But the activities are these 3 here, and the cost driver is also stated here: number of displays, number of inserts, number of orders. So that is basically 5, and also, sorry, 5 is basically the cost drivers, and 6 is identify activities. Well, this is basically, sorry, this is activities as such, and this is the cost driver for each activity, and here it's given to you over there. Okay, so I can move down to 7. Find out how many units of each cost driver is used for each cost object. Ladies and gentlemen, that's basically the data you have over here. The small table. There's 3 rows because there's 3 activities, and there's 3 columns because there are 3 cost objects. So that's number 7 on my list. Find out how much money is spent in total between all cost objects on that activity. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the numbers here that I'm looking for. How much is spent, how much is in the cost pool for each activity. And then 9, add the number of cost driver units across all cost objects. So I have to go to the solution. That's basically what happens here. This is restating what is in the assignment text, and this is actually the step step 9 on my list. We add these numbers up. For instance, we can take this one. We add these up. We get in the first one 300. So that's step 9 on my list. Step 10 on my list. For each activity, find the cost driver or not. Yes, basically, what we must do is we must we divide the 4.5 million spent on point of sale displays by the 300 displays that we make for this money. So we find out, at least on the average, it costs us 15,000 to make a display. That's the cost driver rate, what we call it. We find the cost driver rate. So that's basically step 10 I was doing over here. And then let's see what happens. No, I should go to the right one here. Up. Calculate indirect cost for each activity and each cost object. That is basically getting to these numbers. Again, I have 3 activities and accidentally have the same number of cost objects. That's 3 cost objects. So if I just take an example, I could take the first one, or I could take the first one. Again, 200 displays made for these people, and each one costs 15,000 to make. So you must always freeze this column if you design a spreadsheet like this. You can see my dollar sign here. Okay, we just take another example. We'll take the last one. So here's the cost driver rate for the last activity, order handling, and let's just see here. Yeah, 250 were used for this cost object extreme. Okay, and it's convenient to put totals on both directions, total spanning the different cost objects and spanning the different activities. So yeah, then down here, I don't think I put this explicitly on the list, but I have to remain a little bit of challenge for you. Let me just go down here. These ones I didn't comment on, but this was number 11. Now go to 12. Make another table below the following rows for each cost object. Yeah, sales revenue, direct cost of goods sold, gives us then contribution margin, and then comes a result from our ABC calculation, allocated at indirect cost. So that's the result. I can actually see the formula. I'm just repeating what I found up there. It can of course be designed in different ways in Excel, but I think this gives a good overview. So this is basically the result of my ABC calculation. And then I have a profit for each cost object, and I have a total profit over there. I would find out profit divided by revenue. Again, you could call it return on sales. How do that fluctuate for different products? I have commented on that in the other video, and we have also used it in class. We've gone through it in class. So let's see here. Observe profitability of each cost object and comment on it. If the assignment asks you to comment on it, and it probably does. So this has become very lousy in profitability. This has become very good, and this is also reasonably good. You should make it a little bit more extensive than these comments from me. Okay, and then probably you will most often be asked also to compare the conclusions of the old and the new system. And you can see what I did about that over here. Repeated results from the additional system. So yes, it seemed this was very profitable. This was nearly as profitable, and this was only barely profitable. So we see the conclusion changed drastically, and we comment on it down here. And again, as I always tell you, you should read the exam assignment or the exercise when you think you've finished answering it. You must be careful that you actually did all the calculations and commented on all the things they asked you for if you want to get full credit. So check that. Very likely you'll have to suggest what improvements you find relevant. Also, when you did this comparison of the two systems, if we go back to this, you could make calculations like these. Must you do that? Maybe not necessarily, but that can be a thing you can add to it if you want to improve your solution. So now I will not make this video any longer, but I said there are videos, I think both in Danish and English, showing how this solution is actually done step by step. Here I'm just trying to connect it to the general list of steps I've done here. Okay, bye for now.